Hey everybody, Jonathan Matt Mendes, Painted Love, and welcome to my channel. Today, another revisited look at one of my old Academy tutorials. Now this one was Build Vintage Faded Florals. It's another decoupage project, this time using napkins. Now napkins are so readily available to us all, and it's a great way to start out with decoupage. Now, if you're experienced with decoupage and you've done napkin decoupage, this tutorial may be still of use because I do a little bit of contour blending to the piece of furniture in the front half of this tutorial. So if you want to see how that's done, check out the first half. Also, there is a quite interesting way of bedding in the napkin decoupage at the end. So you might want to go through the whole tutorial. I don't know, whatever fits your taste. Let's take a look. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove all hardware. I really like the colour of this hardware, but that's something that can be changed at the end. We're going to do all of the paintwork and decoupage first, and then we'll move on with the handles at the end. So I think I'm just going to replace the handles as is, because I like these handles. Oh, always remember, when removing handles, carefully store them in a bowl or something out of the way so you don't lose anything if you're going to keep the handles from the original piece. There was one missing up here, but I had one in my spares in my drawer, so always keep all your handles. So I'm lucky, when I bought this piece, it was missing the top handle, and I found one that fitted perfectly, so I'm happy. So all of the hardware is now off, and all I'm doing is taking some masking tape to masking tape the edges of the drawers. Why I'm doing this is because the drawers in this piece of furniture are quite tight, and I don't want there to be lots of paint on the edges of these drawers. I want them to run freely once we've done the project. Sometimes I paint them, depends on how big the aperture of the drawer is, and occasionally I'll even sand back the side of the drawers to make them smaller. But in this case, I'm going to keep it's nice and clean inside the drawers, so I'm going to keep the wood on the internal spaces. The colour that I'm going to be using is a pink, a soft pink. I'm going to go with Antoinette on this piece. With decoupage with napkins, you do need to have a very pale base. I'm going to put in the resource section of this tutorial different combinations of colours that you could use. So if you want to check that and you don't want to go pink and you want to go maybe with old white or another colour, I will put that in there. So check out that after you've watched the video. So I've removed all of the drawers, I've put them to one side. I'm going to paint the carcass first. And I've got my Antoinette. I've given it a good stir with a wooden stick. In this case, one of Annie's stir sticks. Always use a wooden stick instead of a metal object, because if you use a metal object, it can damage the can. So always use a wooden object. And I've got to one side, I've got a little bit of water, and I'm just going to submerge my brush into the water just to make the brush a little bit moist, and then I'll wiggle it around in the can and take off the excess off the back of the can, and just go for it really. Get your first coat of paint on. It may need 2 coats with it being a pale colour, and work it into all of the detailed edges. Any what way, I'm not worrying about how neat I am about this, because we're going to add sort of textures. The decoupage napkins are going to have textures as well. So I'm not going to worry about how neat I'm going to go with this. But really, just get your paint on. These edges I'm going to be I'm going to do quite thin layers. Again, I don't want to interrupt the drawer sliding in and out. So not too much paint. You probably could use a little bit more water on the brush in these areas. And I'm not going to do more than 1 coat on these areas. I will do on the outside, these areas all around the edges will do a little bit more to get better coverage, but on the inside, probably not. We want these drawers to slide nice and freely. I like to also just tickle inside the aperture of the drawer. Once the drawer's in, you're not going to see this anyhow. You could spend the time and use masking tape in there, but I'm not going to. I have done on the inside of the cupboard, however. There's a little bit of masking tape in here, and I will paint up to the edge of that, because the cupboards you can see inside. The drawers, once they're in, you won't see that, so I'm not going to worry about being too neat regarding these edges. I know some people like to paint everywhere, even inside. I saw a lady in South Africa and she showed me this awesome piece of furniture where she painted the whole back and lined it with paper. I probably don't have that much patience. I like to just get on and everything look good on the outside. So we've had first coat on and 15 minutes drying time. It's quite a warm day today in the workshop, so it's dried pretty quick. So this is second coat. I do believe it'll probably need half a coat again. There'll be some areas of translucency that we'll have to touch up afterwards. This tends to happen with the paler colours, as you may know. So on with the second coat. As you can probably see, the colour is building up really nicely. This is the second coat. It probably will need another half coat here and there, little edges like this, but I'm not going to worry too much because I could probably wet distress these and have nice little I'm going to put out a little bit of the base colour, which was Antoinette. We're going to put a little bit of that onto the plate. So we can take the shade up or down in tone. And I'm going to use a little bit of cocoa as well, because cocoa should look quite nice with, it's quite a pinky colour in tone. And also a meal. So a meal, again, it's more purpley pink. So we can play around with these three colours on the piece. Now, as you can see, there's some in there, a bit of grufty bit in there, get rid of that. So as you can see on the plate, the three tones, all I'm going to do, as I've got my water as well, and you might need a little bit of a spritz, so I'm going to spritz the plate. So this should loosen up those colours. And we're going to take, I've got a few brushes on the go, I don't know which one I'm going to use, I'm going to try and use this chip brush I think. And I'm going to just literally mix the colours into the centre of the plate. So I'm going to go with all three colours together. and a bit of water, so it loosens the paint. You can see it's a little bit runny. And then we're just going to go into each aperture like this, into the corners. It looks quite scary, but don't be scared of it. Just do that. Maybe pick up a bit more of the Antoinette through the middle, and we can soften that out. So basically, a bit of the dark stuff into the detail. It's just making it more interesting in its tone, and just play around with the colours. So it's a little bit like dark waxing, it's adding some sort of tone on tone. Don't worry too much about how it looks, just go for it. Same thing again, we're going to pick up some more. We're going to do it into this one, up into the corners. And we probably, at the end, we may add a little bit of dark wax, I don't know. We'll see when we get to that point. We're going to go a bit more Emile on this side. Look, I'll put a bit of Emile here. Pretty scary, yeah? A bit of water. And then we're going to go back with the Antoinette just to soften while it's wet. This will help soften and add tone. So it's a little bit like adding a bit of dark wax, but it's paint. Don't be frightened of these things, it really will come together. Plus the fact we're going to have the decoupage over the top, so this is really just to soften. Now if you've got little accidents like this, little blunders, you can pick up your Antoinette and soften back over with your brush. This is what I do. Takes a steady hand, just soften them back in. It's quite forgiving. So here we go again, we're going to use a little bit more of a Emile in this one. So into the aperture, kind of wiggle the brush around into the corners, straight round, push. This little lip, this is why I chose this piece of furniture, this little lip really helps. So if you've got a piece of furniture with little lips, like apertures in the lip, it will help you immensely when doing this. So that's that. And I'm probably going to go back to my Antoinette brush, and we're going to soften through the middle, add a bit more paint. So it's tone on tone. It does take a little bit of practice, this. You're jumping from one brush to another, but it really does make the biggest of difference. I hope you can see on the camera. Just adding that smokiness to each bit of the corner of each piece. There we go. And sometimes I take the time to stand back. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Maybe a little bit more Emile here, into the corners. And we probably, all these little edges, we're probably going to distress them anyway, so don't worry if you overlap too much. This will take a bit of practice, but you will get your head around it. Let's move on to the next one. Up into that corner. So there's a lot of moisture in this paint. I'm kind of working with it like a watercolour paint. So I've sprayed the plate. So I've got the freedom to keep it while it's wet. While it's wet, it's moving around much easier for me to spread it around. It helps me get in there. We pick up a little bit more Antoinette, straight through the middle. If you've got a big brush, you can do these circular motions, that helps. So that's just putting that bit of paint back on, and then jump back to the other brush. We can blend that out. So it's just blending, softening from one brush to the other. Without taking away the darkness to the edges. You might sometimes need to dry your brush off a little bit, because that helps as well. Cleaning one brush. So it's a subtle thing, but it makes such a big difference. It ages these drawers lovely. I'm going to pick up a bit more of the Antoinette and put it in the middle because I feel like that needs to be lighter in the middle. So it's adding that shade. It's like a light bolt through the middle. There we go. Again, I'm going to stand back and take another look at it. I'm quite happy with that. We're going to keep on going, repeat, repeat, repeat on each drawer, all the way around. So I'm on the final drawer. I'm spritzing. Remember, if you're spritzing your plate, spritz away from your piece of furniture because you will get watermarks in it. Although for this piece, it probably would be quite nice. So spritzing the plate, the last bit of tone on tone in this drawer. Again, I'm playing with the colours. It doesn't really matter which colours I'm going to go for. A bit of everything here, a bit of moisture into the aperture. You can see it's quite a lot of moisture in there. Push the brush into that crevice. Maybe pick up a bit more of a solid paint, a bit of a meal there. More purple there here. And a little bit of a soften with, can lose that. A little bit of a soften through the middle. Like so. We're going to use a dry the brush on my penny to soften. Still a lot of moisture. You might want to have a towel to hand just to dry and soften these off. But you can see it's quite simple to do. It just requires a little bit of patience and a bit of time. It's well worth doing. I think you probably can see on the camera how worth it to put this tone on tone shading into the panels. And this is before we do any decoupage. It's just adding layers and layers of different things going on. So your eyes are drawn into all different directions of the piece of furniture. This is what makes my furniture stand out really well on camera. So this is what we're going to do. You know, literally add tone and a little bit of character. It's all about playing. This paint is a playful product. And that's what we intend to do with it. I'm thinking also, I might do a little bit under here, although we've got a hidden technique later on I'm going to use, so you might not see this, but a little bit, it's a bit like adding a shadow line, so we might just put a little heavy stuff under here, like that, right underneath that lip, into the corners. So you can see I'm not really worrying about how I put this on. It's just adding a little bit of dimension to there. I'm going to pick up some paint. Move all the brushes out of the way as we go along. Little wiggly movements with the brushes, little circular. Think of like blusher, adding blusher to your cheeks. That kind of helps. And it just adds that little bit of tone underneath, a little bit of dimension. Just keep on working it and you'll get it. So you can dry your brush on something. It's a bit wet brushy, dry brushy. I say that quite a lot, playing around with the paint. I will photograph some of these for you as well, so you'll be able to see them close up. But this is one I've got one, I think this is a V&A pattern. I don't know. When I bought these, I bought them off eBay, and I typed in V&A floral napkin, and that's what came up. There's also some with ivy. It's got a bit of a can on there, but I'm going to take that out. I think we might use some of them. Things to stay away from, things like this. This is not so good because they're a bit naive. They don't really look sort of hand painted. Or, you know, let's see what else we've got in here. This is maybe quite good. Kind of looks a bit hand painted. The background colour though, it's a bit dull, so it will dull down on that colour. I like the ones with a white background. Let's have a little look. What else? What to stay away from? Definitely that. So you can see it's a really vivid background. So stay away from them. Go for the ones that look more hand painted. And I think we're going to go for a mixture of maybe the ivy leaves, this floral. And I'm going to show you how to prepare the napkins. Let's get rid of them. Put them back in there. And I'm going to bring my chair. And we might get you a close-up of this. So basically, oh, I'm going to lose this apron as well. Get rid of the apron. That's it, freedom, no paint. So I'm going to sit here, and so usually the napkins, they're 3-ply, and all I'm going to do is between my forefingers and thumbs, I'm just going to pull away around the edge. So this blurs the boundaries. So don't pull away the pattern, but it softens the edge. So you literally, if I can put it close to the blue on my jeans, you can see, we're getting quite close to the edge, but literally just teasing away the edges of the napkins. And we work all the way around the edge until you've gone right around the design. Also, with this napkin, I might rip through the middle of it so I can spread the patterns out. So we're going to make different patterns with these. I love this deep aubergine flower, so we might feature that a couple of times. So basically that's it. Just keep on teasing away. There is other ways of doing it. This is just my way. It's quick, easy, all the way around. I found this quite therapeutic. You might want to do this the night before you start to paint, so you've got all of your florals already prepped and ready to go. So as you can see, little jagged edge all the way around, and that basically preps you for the decoupage. Also, these are 3-ply. You sometimes get 2-ply napkins, but 3-ply, if you lick your finger and just tap it like that, you will take a layer away, which is that's one layer. And you can reuse those back bits. And again, if you do it again, it takes a little bit of effort. That's it. In we go. So there's another layer. So just peel off the layers. So it gives you a very thin layer. To the thin piece, and I've just basically been laying these over the piece where I think they might go. So I'm gonna wrap this round the corner. I'm gonna put a big one there. I did consider these ones, but the pink of these ones are perhaps too bright, too vivid. So I'm gonna skip with those ones. I'm just gonna stick with the lovely V&A ones with this beautiful piece of ivy, maybe draped around the corner. But there we have it. You can see I've laid out. I'm going to clear the decks and just focus on one piece at a time. Because this is quite big, it's quite difficult. It's a one-time only thing. Once you've got moisture on there with glue, you can't touch this with your hands, because if you start touching it, it's going to all buckle and come off. So you kind of have to go with it. If you've got wrinkles, let the wrinkles be. because when we wax and add different paint colours over the top, it's going to look quite interesting anyway. I have to the side of me, I have some cling wrap, cellophane, whatever country you're in, it's called different things, food wrap. You can see it's just basically a thin piece of plastic. This will act as a barrier once there's glue on there. So you don't put your fingers through it. So we're just going to go for it. In the bowl, I have what we call PVA glue in this country. I'm using PVA glue because you do need quite a lot of this. Children's glue, craft glue, there's other brands, maybe Mod Podge, lots of different things for decoupage. But the cheapest thing over here is PVA glue. And I've got a very soft brush. So this soft brush is going to help me. It's an artistry brush, but it's quite wide and I can work quite quickly. So I'm kind of I'm eyeballing where I want this pattern to be. I'm loving these greens and this deep aubergine flower. So I'm gonna work to this aubergine flower. And I'm going to wrap it around that corner. So I have to take the glue around the corner. So imagine your space where you're going to place this, and I'm just going to lift away. And we're just going to apply a generous amount of glue over the paintwork. If you're not quite sure where the glue should be, go a bit further. It's easier. So I'm wrapping around the corner on this one, so extra glue, like so. And like I said, it's a one-time thing only. You need to hover over the piece with the napkin and then just let it go. So with them being big, I'm going to let it float over the top and down. So not too much pulling and pushing with this. There we go. That feels good to me. Right, cling wrap. This is perforated, so I can pull a little bit off. And down it goes, over the top. Kind of cover up everything. Like so. Now, lots of people do this very different ways. I like to use my finger and just literally smooth it in, looking through the cling wrap so you can see where you're going and just smoothing out. Other people tend to do this. Ball up a little bit of cling wrap and put some glue on it and then use that as a smoother. So that's another way of doing it. You can smooth all of the bubbles out. So pick up some glue, smooth it in. And I've missed a bit up there, but that's not a worry to me. I will get that on when we lift up the cling wrap. Nice squeaky noises. So the idea is to smooth every bubble out, kind of work from the center outwards. Over the edge, even over the hinge. And around the corner, working away. So this is how to get your decoupage on your piece. So you should be able to see through. Make sure you push into all the detail. Feels good to me. Take your time over it. I'm rushing, but take your time over this. All right, let's have a little sneaky peek. Yeah, that looks quite good. So if you're not sure of any areas where you've got lumps, you can go back, you can push it back and just work it back in. You can keep on working it. Or you can put another piece on if you want to. So what I'm gonna do up here, one quick pass over that, because there wasn't enough glue on it. That's it. There we go. Try not to touch it with your fingers. Push out all the wrinkles. there we go. I quite like some of the wrinkles. Other people don't, but you can keep on smoothing and smoothing, but I think this will add to the whole thing in the end. So that's the first part of the decoupage on. We're going to literally, to work out where we want to place the next piece, I sometimes do this. Take another bit of cling wrap over the top. This is a good tip for you. If you into decoupage, place it on top. Whilst that's still sticky, you can then, so you don't get this all tacked up, you can work out where your next piece is going to go. So if you cover it all with the film, you can work out where it's going to next go, but work a little bit by bit, let each layer dry, and then move on. But that's basically it. And we're going to spread it around the corner and keep on going, and then we're going to repeat on the other side of the piece. I've decided not to go through any decoupage through the middle, through the about this connection. I'm just going to go over it, and then once it's dried, we can carve through the doorway and make it nice and neat. So I've put some glue, quite generous over here, and we're just going to literally drop this into this piece first, allow it to come up, poke it in a little bit with my finger, and then over that lip and round. So you can manipulate a little bit. There's a little bit that I've missed there on the corner. There. So back with the film. Drop over the top. Make sure it's all covered, all the edges are covered. Like that. And another little ball. Pick up some glue and spread. So never worry about going over the doors. I've gone over the hinge here, and I've also gone over this little lip, and I'm pushing into that groove, and then it's something we'll cut out at the end. We'll just take a little blade, slice through that connection, and it will marry up with the door afterwards. So another good little tip, push into there, and that should be it. Get that bit under there. There's going to be lots of paint over these later on, which you're going to see, so I'm not worrying about being too neat about it. About this area, because we're going to put some paint over this in a little while, but the next part of the technique is we need to seal these napkins, because I'm going to be using quite wet paint over the top of them, and I don't want them to buckle. So all we're going to do is now use the same again, the PVA glue over the top. Only once this is dried. You have to wait for this to dry, because if you don't, it will pull your napkins all over the place. So over the top, seal them in like so. Also, another little technique, this can come after you've done this and after the next part, but I'm going to show you now. I've got a little palette knife here. Where we've gone over the doors, you can just literally carve away. You could take a knife, so wherever there's an opening, literally just carve through. That will break up the door, so the door will open again. So you can just carve through like so. So that's another good technique, but you could probably do it after you've done all of your top coat. So we're using this as a top coat. Also, we're going to use to absolutely make sure that this is waterproof, because we're going to add wet paint over the top. We're going to use Annie Sloan lacquer. It could be varnish. It's basically just to seal this in, hard and fast underneath. So I just like to belt and braces everything, make sure that it's all sealed away so we don't lose all of that time that you spent putting this beautiful decoupage onto your piece. So quite liberally. You might want to do this on one day and then the next day complete, and then it will be nice and hard and ready to go really with the paint. So if you can take it to the point where you're putting your lacquer or your varnish over the top, leave it overnight and come back to it the next day ready for the paint. I'm not particularly looking, I'm going any what way. I'm not really, I like the textures, I like the wrinkles. Paint's gonna grab on those wrinkles. So you don't have to be professional about it. It's about having fun really. This should really harden off lovely. Don't dip the brush in your cup of tea. So the colours will come back. You can see they've gone a bit dull. They will come back once it's dried. That's that. We'll move on to the other side. Like so. I've been quite quick with applying this. Once it's hardened off that first layer of glue, you can be quite quick with this. If you don't let it harden off, your decoupage will buckle and you don't want to pull it off. So you really do need to let these layers dry before moving on to your next stage. That's it. All right, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to have another tea break. I'm going to leave this to dry till it becomes translucent again, and then we're going to go with the lacquer. So here we have it. All the glue is dried on the decoupage and I'm super happy with the outcome. This is the point where we would use varnish or lacquer to go over the top of these to seal these down nice and hard. But I have a little confession to make. During the gluing of these, when the piece was on its back, I left a mug of tea on top of this, this drawer, and it left a mark. And I've had to fashion it back in with the paint, but it has left a little indentation where it was. So in this case, I've decided to do a little bit more decoupage. And let me show you this napkin. The one that I chose with the ivy leaf running across, it had a little bucket on there, and I chose to cut that out and take it away, but just use the ivy. But the artist that created this was very clever because they put this little beetle on, this very cute little beetle. So I've chosen to cut him out, fray the edges really neatly, and he's just going to sit on that drawer just for a bit of fun. So all I'm going to do is take a small artistry brush and apply where I did this boo-boo, and I'm going to gently fashion that in over my little ring mark. There we go. And on he goes, just there, his new home. Tap in, like so, and we'll leave him to dry, and then we'll go over him with some more glue, and then we'll move on to the lacquer. So let me explain about the lacquer. The Annie Sloan's lacquer has a sediment, it all settles to the bottom, so you do need to use a wooden stair stick to reactivate all the sediment from the bottom and give it a good old stir before use. I'm going to use the same brush. The same brush is what I was using before. I've washed it out. It's a soft brush, and all we're going to do is just go over the top of everywhere. This will form a hard sealed in surface, and then tomorrow when we add paint, it's not going to buckle up the decoupage. So do lots of gaps here. I don't like the gaps. The idea for me is that we're going to fill in these with a bit of paint, and then we've got other techniques that are going to go over the top of that. So the colours that I'm going to use to fill these in is olive and cocoa. So we're going to go for a muddy, dirty colour. Some of these sort of tones, maybe French linen would be quite nice, but all I'm going to do is put some onto a plate, some olive with a brush and a little bit of, we'll have to take this out of the can. This can's nearly empty, so I'm just going to, don't tell me off for contaminating the can. There we go. So, and a little bit of water to that, just to loosen the paint a little bit. So I'm spritzing, and I'm just picking up little bits of paint. And all I'm going to do is very carefully just stipple in around. So we're trying to take away some of the pink tones. So this is adding sort of a background colour. So just tap these in. Try to keep as much of the florals as you can. But all we're doing is just tap, 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 tap. Maybe a bit of the cocoa. Just tap them in. So I'm just kind of doing a stippling sort of action. This may take a bit of time, but go around everything you possibly can and not leave too much of the Antoinette. So we're going to do it a bit heavier down here. We're going to block out all of this tone. Leave some of those ivy leaves. We just want them to pick out a little bit over the top. A little bit around there. I'm not going to go over to this side too much. Little highlights, maybe a little bit in here. So just build your colour up. We're going to round the corner. So it's filling the missing blanks in the decoupage, really. It doesn't have to be too technically done. There'll be another thing that disguises this in a moment, you'll see. So stand back, you can look. So it's all becoming one thing now. You can see that the patterns are blending together as one. If you make a little mishap and you go over a little bit, you can take a damp sponge and just, because there's the lacquer or varnish, you can just clean up. So if you think, oh, I've gone over that too much, we'll go over that flower, we can just clean it back. So don't fear, just keep on going. We only want little glimmers of the colour poking through. And sometimes, even though this is a big area, I could just tap some colour into there, just to, on the green areas, just to make it blend more in. A bit up there. So, clean them off. We'll repeat on the other side and round the other sides. I think a bit more down here on the greeny tones. To the edge of this door. Go in there. Same on this side, we just add a bit of tone into here. It's a little bit like stippling when you do stenciling. It's very similar, just filling in the little gaps. So you can probably see now we've got more of a solid finish to those. And what we're going to, I'm going to keep on going. The Antoinette, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this on the end of a chip brush, remove excess, and we're just going to literally soften, push it back into itself. We can do little circular motions. It'll pick up all of the crinkles in your decoupage, which is quite nice as well, and just soften them in. So it's making it more smoky, and so it pushes the pattern back into the background. So this is what this is all about. So you can see, you might see on the camera, it's tough to see on the camera, but you might see it slowly getting a little bit duller. Oh, mistake. Too much paint, didn't wipe it off. So you can use your sponge to remove the paint. So you must keep on going back, remove excess, that's it. And just soften them in. And what I like to do, once we've done that, we'll go over all the paintwork as well. Pick more up. So a little circular motion all the way down. And then take your damp sponge, and I'm just highlighting the tops of these flowers, so removing a little bit, so just tapping it away. It brings back the crispness of the colour, but leaving it dull underneath. So it's a bit like the highlighting of a shading. So you can just bring them back, so you get some colour back into each flower, which is quite nice. So because we've got the lacquer or varnish on there, you can do this. You can play around with the colour a little bit more, like so. So that's that, and I'll repeat on the other side, but for now we're going to go into mixing some colours. As you can see, I've brought lots of colour out here. So the idea is, each one of these flowers, the colours, I'm going to try and mix on the mix mat. We're going to remove Antoinette for now. So we're going to go for a purple tone. This to me is a bit like a Scandi orangey tone. And what else have we got here? We've got the deep green. So we're going to go with Amsterdam green for the leaf colour. So first things first, we're going to go with a little bit of Scandi. That's going to go on the mix mat. And probably a little bit on this one, we're going to go for a little bit of Arl next to it. So that gives you sort of the orangey tones. We might put over this side a little bit more Arl, because we're going to use the green, so we can soften the green. Let's move them back out the way. Let's see, Scandi can come out the way. Clean up as we go along. That can stay there. What have we got? We'll have a little bit of, this is for the purpley tone, so we'll have a little bit of burgundy. So a little bit of burgundy and aubusson. This should make a deep aubergine purple for this flower. So we don't need burgundy, that can come out of the way for now, until we need more. Put the lid back on, don't forget the lid. And we're going to go with a little bit of Amsterdam green. So we're going to put this next to the yellowy tone, so we can play around with that colour. I've got Annie's new artistry brushes, and we're going to use them on the mix mat to apply these colours. And you're going to see just how I'm going to do that just now. Let's remove the caps off. I've got all different sizes, so that's perfect. And we're going to need to add some water to these. So let's go, we'll go with the Scandi sort of orangey florals. I'm just going to spritz the mat a little bit, so there's a bit of water there. And I'm going to play around with the colours on the mat. So there is, I probably might even take a little bit of the burgundy in there just to deepen the tone. So we've got all of these sort of orangey tones in here. That feels quite good to me. So you can see I'm always marrying those colours up. And this is the fun part. I'm going to saturate the piece and make sure there's plenty of moisture on here, and we're just going to literally dab some colours. These colours are going to go drippy over the edge. So I'm picking up all of these colours, different shades, and we're going to allow them to trickle down. See, this flower is a bit more pinky in its tone, so we might take a little bit more of the burgundy there and allow that to trickle down. We're starting from the bottom because I feel braver to start from the bottom, and just literally let them trickle down. Can you see how we've got a trickly mess? But that's what I want it to be. Right, now pick up another brush. We're going to play with some of the greens here from the ivy colour, and we're going to use the Arls. Going to make a nice soft green palette here. Spritz the mat so there's plenty of water. And we're going to just tap in here. We're going to, look, there's a nice bit of green there, some of these ivies. And I'm just tapping, again, it's a tapping action over where the areas of the colour, like there's a lot of green there, and we might add a bit of green there, and there's definitely from that leaf there, look, and some of these. So tap, tap, tap with the moisture of the paint. So it's adding more colour. There's a nice area to do here. Maybe a bit under there. And we're just literally spritzing it away. So allow it to trickle down. Now you can see why we used lacquer and varnish to harden everything off, because really, if you did this with the napkins just with the glue, it would all buckle. So this is allowing you to put lots of moisture back into the paint. Right, let's have a little bit of fun. I'm going to use a different brush again, and we're going to mix up a lovely deep aubergine for this flower. So we're going to use the Aubusson and the burgundy together to get a rich purple. So I'm playing with the colours on the mix mat, and I'm kind of marrying them into each other. So I'm looking back, and then we're going to go right up here. We're going to go tap, 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 tap. Do we want more bluey tones, I think, for this one? Tap, 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 tap. Up here. So I'm going underneath the floral, more to one edge, and then spritzing. So a bit more. So I'm allowing it all to fall over each part. So it's basically pushing everything back. I think we're going to go back for more green up here, more greeny tones, because there's a bit more colour in here. So this is really having fun, being playful with the paint. And it's kind of a kaleidoscope of colours, which is really beautiful, these tones. So we're using the tones of the napkins as our reference point, and then allowing it just to smudge over. If you want to bring back a flower like this one a little bit, you can tap that back out with your sponge and freshen it up. So you can go back and freshen each one up. So I'm going to keep on working over the piece and building all of the colours. We may go back up here. I do think I might need to add an addition of some Antoinette. So we'll get the Antoinette back out, because these colours are a lot paler, but we'll go with a little Arles, Scandi Pink, Burgundy and Aubusson, and I'm playing around with all those colours together on here. And what we're going to do, excuse the back of my head because I'm going to work on this, we're going to spritz the whole thing again, put plenty of moisture onto the piece. I keep on spritzing the mix mat as well, because this is adding some sort of fluency to the paint. So that's playing with that. And we'll go with this flower again. We're going to pick up these orangey tones, and we're going to dab under here. Maybe a little bit of the burgundy into that as well to add some richness. I'm going to pop a bit under there so it travels underneath. I'm just tapping away, little bits like that, and then we just spritz again and allow it to trickle. So that's all I'm doing. Got a bit of the wrong colour in that brush now. That's it. So just keep on playing with these colours, tap, tap, tap. Let's move on to this beautiful aubergine flower. So again, you can see I've mixed the colour on here. And with the mix mat, you can see, because it's a white background, we can see what sort of tones we're going to get. I think a bit more bluey in tone, so more Aubusson. And we tap, tap, tap underneath. And this really adds a lovely rich. I'm not doing the whole flower, I'm just kind of tapping underneath this flower and exaggerating a little bit. We'll go with some of the green tones. We'll go up here, some green. This leaf's lovely in green. So this is Amsterdam, nice rich colour. Little tap up there. There's some of the ivy it's vanished into the background, but we're just going to still imagine if it was still there. We're going to tap, tap, tap. we're really making it a little bit like a watercolour painting that's just trickled down the page. So we're using the napkins as a guide to where to place the colours. Let's play with a little bit of, I'm going to wipe this brush and we're going to pick up some of the Antoinette for this one because it's paler. So we're going to use Antoinette, a little bit of the mixture from the orangey tones, but we're going to go like that, a little bit under there, a little bit on there, some up there, but not every flower. We're going to leave some of the top flowers kind of free and then spritz again. Not too much, just enough to send it trickling downwards, and sponge again. If you want to free up your florals, you can tap away with a sponge to open up the colours again. And I'm going over the top of them, just along the top edge. And then I'm going to push a few little bits of green, add more green, some Amsterdam green, richness, especially down here, lower down. So you can kind of see what I'm doing. A little bit pinky tone up here, lovely pinky tone here. There's a flower there I think deserves here and here. So I hope you can see that on the camera. You get the idea. Use this as your guide. Try and replicate the colours here and then just tap away and allow it to trickle down. There needs a bit more there if you see this. So a good plant spritz will really help. And, oh, that's picked up the wrong colour again, but not to worry. We'll go over that with a bit more pink. There we go. And then tap, tap, tap. You can build upon your colour. Don't overwork the piece. Just kind of, if you need to, allow it to dry and come back to it and add more tone. It'll be fine to do it over and over again. But hopefully you can see on the camera how this works. This is basically blending all of the decoupage together. We may do a little bit more dry brushing over it once this is dried. I don't know, we'll see how it dries and then we'll move on to the next bit. So another little handy tip for you. Normally when I do decoupage I add little shadow lines here and there, and I do that using eyeshadow. Don't ask me why I have eyeshadow in my kit, but I do. So all I'm going to do is I'm only going to do this bug, the little stag beetle, because I think it needs to have a little bit of shadow, so it almost looks 3D and it's popping from the piece of furniture. So I'm going to use a little brush. You could use the little foam applicator, but a little brush. So you're adding some sort of chalkiness to it, and we're just going to tap underneath, and it adds sort of like a dull shadow to him. So just underneath his body, so the light's coming from there, we're adding a little bit of shadow. Right, the tricky thing with this, if you're doing a whole piece, you need to seal it in with the varnish or the lacquer. So a little tap, 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 just underneath, and he becomes sort of like he's walking across. A little bit darker, add a bit of darkness under there. Blow away the excess, tap it in. So now, under his belly, he's got a shadow from the light. I'm quite happy with that. A little bit of a cloth. So if you get any mistakes, because again the lacquer's there, you can just remove the mistake. A little bit heavy there. And then, with one fell swoop, you have to work away from the shadow. I'm just going to use a little bit of lacquer to seal it in. So, outwardly, from his body out. If I go the other way, I'm going to take the shadow up. So we don't want to do that, just a little bit out. And then any little marks that we don't like, just tap them away. So that's a little technique for you. Play around with it. So it's added a little shadow. There, I've gone back and tapped a little bit more in while the lacquer's wet, you can see. So that should seal it in. There we go. So the colour that I'm using is kind of a real smoky, dark slate colour. And as you can see, as the lacquer is still on there, I can still work this by tapping in whilst it's still wet. now we're at the final flourishes of detail. So I'm just gonna go back and do a little bit more Antoinette dry brushing, a little bit of a bristly brush, a chip brush, and just soften this in a little bit towards the top edge, I think. So it's like the light's casting a shadow almost. Just over the top of these. Push it further back in, the detail, just picking a little bit up each time. And it makes it more smoky in its tone. So we've got it's taking the colours not so garish, so we're just softening a little bit too much there, that's it. You can still take away if you're not sure. I don't mind the colours too sharp. The sharper at the bottom, that's fine. Just the top is quite nice just to soften those colours in. So that's that. We'll move on to the other side. A little bit up here. A bit too much there, we can take off. So when you make a mistake, don't panic. We can go back and fix these things. Stand back, take a look at it. I'm happy with that softness of that. Always take a step back to look at your work. I'm really happy. So that's that. Now to finish, all we're going to do is we're going to do some Flyspeck, which you've seen me probably do on other tutorials, but that'll add another layer to push all of this back into the background. And I'm going to use en fleur into a bowl. We won't need too much. Now, quantities, I always use, I'm going to come down onto my knees, and I always use my spritz, a few pumps before I start mixing the colour. So that's loosened the paint a little bit, so it's kind of a drippy consistency. It just needs to, if it's a fresh can of paint, your paint will be a little bit more runnier anyhow. I think it needs a little bit more. That's about right, I think. Now, if you're not brave as me, do it on a practice piece first, but I'm just going to go for it. Also, let me talk about the brush. This is the cheapest brush I could find at the hardware store. It's natural bristle, and I've chopped the top. So it's half a brush. It adds that sort of toothbrushy feel to it. I've tried it with toothbrushes. It's not quite as good. These brushes tend to be better. So, or even a long artistry brush with natural bristle, we can achieve this. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go for this corner, and I'm going to flick. So little speckles, and we're just going to go all over the piece. So this is going to imitate sort of woodwormy holes. I'm going to go down here. I don't mind if it comes onto this side. I'm going to allow it to a little bit, but we're just going to flick, 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 flick. And it adds another layer of pushing those napkins deep beneath. So over the top. And we will do a little bit on this edge at the bottom. But not too much, just a little bit on the corners. A little bit near the beetle. Done. So we'll do the same on the other side. Look at the consistency again. It's just the consistency of just falling off the brush. So if that might help you, have a little play. So excess off the brush, flick, 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 and I'm just literally flick, flick, flick. And it adds another layer over the top. Do it heavier on the bottom. Maybe a little bit up there. There we go. And I'll follow the process round the sides. Leave this to dry good and proper, and then we will wax, because obviously this paint has had lacquer, but the new paint hasn't had the lacquer. So we're going to wax the whole piece. It will give a soft and add a bit of a shadow line through the whole panel. You can go straight over your decoupage as well, right the way around. Adds that little bit more dimension and age. So like this, right into the corners. To soften, you can use your clear just to soften the edges of that. And circular motions just push. So it adds that another layer of damage. We'll do a bit around this drawer. So although we added paint for the dimension, this is another level, so a little bit darker. I'm not going to add too much because it spoils it, it muckies it up to a little bit too much, so just small amounts. And then just soften with your large clear. You might want to clean the brush every now and again. You don't want to fill this with dark. Clean it with clear, because clear wax removes dark wax. So I don't know if you can see on camera, it's just adding that another softness to each panel. I'm going to work over all the pieces, all of the drawers. Do another little bit up here for you. A little bit shading, maybe a bit here. Heavier in some places, probably more there. Soften with the clear and remove.